Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we delve into an event and a city and a community that has captured the attention of the entire world over the last several weeks as the Trump administration, in its effort to exert authoritarian control in the United States, has run directly into citizen protest and nonviolent resistance that has been at such a scale and exercised so heartfully and with such discipline that the world has been inspired. The Trump administration has been stalled in its efforts, and lessons are emerging that are very important for the entire world and our Humanity Rising community, which has registered participants from people in over 132 countries. So this broadcast is going worldwide. To ponder, we are confronted, as we all know, with certain fundamental truths in our time. One of the foundational ones of which is that we are experiencing dysfunction and instability and turbulence at virtually every level of human affairs. Democracies worldwide are under assault by right-wing, fascist, authoritarian tendencies, coercive power being exercised by the state and the technology corporations and the social media. We are confronted as never before with a panoply of surveillance linked to coercive power, in the face of which the citizens seem essentially defenseless. And so the parameters of citizen activism are not only being observed intimately because state power through social media can peer into the intimate details of every one of our lives as never before. And state power has options of control, therefore, at levels and through instrumentalities that have never been available before. So when a community comes together, as they have in Minneapolis and other cities in the United States, and I would add Portland, Oregon, and Chicago, Illinois, and Los Angeles, California, most recently, as the United States has been experiencing something it has never experienced in the nearly 250 years of its history, and that is a president wanting to dispense with democracy itself in order to establish essentially a monarchy. So the levels at play are very nuanced. They're very interactive. And over the next hour, we want to invite two people I happen to know for a very long time, Amy Blumenschein and Mike Troutman, who live in Minneapolis and have a particular vantage point because their home is within literally blocks of where George Floyd was suffocated to death in the May of 2020, right when Humanity Rising was actually being convened. And George Floyd murder occupied our time consistently during that period. And in the recent protests in Minneapolis, they live within blocks of where Renee Good was killed and where Alex Preti was killed. They also are in a community that is diverse, friendly, uh, basically interactive at many different kinds of levels. So there's a microcosm within Minneapolis that we want to explore today. On the one hand, democracy and community, and on the other hand, the coercive force of state power acting in an unconstitutional, illegal, and immoral way. So I'd like to invite Amy and Mike to open up their videos and to join us. And Georg, if Craig Neal is available, please invite him in when he joins the session today. So Amy, Mike, welcome. And first of all, thank you for everything that you're doing on behalf of both democracy and concerned citizenry around the world. And why don't we start um, with a brief introduction? Both Amy and Mike are deeply immersed in the religious community there in Minneapolis as Lutheran deacons. They've been dedicated to nonviolent action for decades. They have traveled to Nicaragua and worked there with the Lutheran ministry in women and children's rights. They've been very active. Amy's been very active in the moral injury to veterans. Did her dissertation actually at Ubiquity University on that topic. Mike has been involved in finance with pension funds and uh, various other activities, and now is active in the resistance there. I also want to bring in Craig Neal. Craig, welcome.
Thank you.
Craig is the co-founder with his wife, Patricia, of the Center for Purposeful Leadership. He's been engaged in the activities there in Minneapolis. He also lives there in Minneapolis. So we thought today we would just bring three people who are intimately involved to tell their stories and to ponder some of the national and global implications of what they're managing to do there in Minneapolis. But Amy, let's start with you, and then Mike. Um, from your own perspective, just tell us what's happened in Minneapolis over the last, I guess, several months
Oh
now,
my goodness.
as
Yes.
it's culminated several weeks ago with the killings and now
Mhm.
with further activity, including today with the arrest of the journalist Don Lemon.
Every day. Well, first I have to thank you, Jim, and Humanity Rising and your whole program through Ubiquity. It has been so nurturing and stimulating to Mike and me, we and so many others. And it's a real honor to be here. And I really do appreciate your paying attention to this because at this crucial moment, we feel like our very community is under attack by the most powerful person and regime on the planet. And so we do think it's important that the word get out. Um, and so we are not leaders in this. We come to you as kind of foot soldiers in the nonviolent resistance. We're part of um, not just the cloud of witnesses, but the crowd of witnesses that are present here. And I like to think of us as part of this murmuration of birds.
Mm.
We flock. We're part of the flock, and we kind of shift and adjust as necessary. Part of what's going on at this very moment is yesterday, 16 of us, we observers, were told that they needed to turn themselves in because now they're under arrest for their, what we think are their legal constitutional rights. But anyway, and so the word went out for others of us, others of the flock, to show up where they need to turn themselves in and turn ourselves in. We're all supposed to turn ourselves in because if looking out for your neighbor is illegal, then we're all guilty of that. So that is the nature of this ever-evolving story, and that's partly why we're here and other people aren't. But we do want to share our stories, and of course, this has been evolving over time, and we've had the examples from LA and Chicago to kind of get alerted, this is happening, this is coming. And so a number of us have been schooled in the Martin Luther Kingian principles of nonviolence. And then we took training related to, know your rights. Let's know what your rights are so that you can be clear about that when it comes to it. And, since then we found out that doesn't really, we seem to be the only ones who know what our rights are. But anyway, and so December 4th, I was waiting for a bus. I was going to go downtown to the city council meeting where we were dealing with climate issues. And I realized something was happening in terms of the traffic around me. And suddenly cars that were unmarked started flashing interior lights, and about 5 of them drove around, and then I heard the whistles. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is happening.
Mm.
And so I was accidentally on the scene of an abduction, and I walked over there, and there were already 2 other observers, hence the whistles. And the poor fellow, whose name, of course, lost, was being pushed into a van by people who were dressed in clothes that anybody could get. There was this whole idea of abduction. I mean, how were we to know even that this was not just some criminal kidnapping? But so one of the
So
other
the ICE officers were not dressed as they're normally depicted in riot gear and
no, that came later. This was their
gotcha.
early stuff.
So
So
these
these
were people
people,
that just looked like regular people. They were
yes. Now
incognito, as it were.
one of them had a jacket and it said federal police on it, which I understand you could buy at Amazon. But because of the circumstances, we had reason to
Gotcha, gotcha.
believe that they were ICE agents. And one of the other observers had the presence of mind to say to the victim, tell me your name and where I should call to let them know that you've been abducted, because we know that people have been disappeared from their families for substantial periods of time. I was flustered. I was getting my camera out. You see all these other people doing these things, but in the moment, it's really tricky. And there was another guy there, and the agent that I was closest to, because there were a swarm of them, he just practically, he was just radiant with sadistic glee. I mean, it felt like a confrontation with evil, frankly. It really
Mhm.
did. And then things started to pick up. So that's when we just had, a few ICE agents doing these things. And then what
Should I,
happened
should I
Sunday
pick
night?
pick up the
Yeah.
story? And I just want to reiterate that we see ourselves as minor players in this reign of evil here, and we are so much less vulnerable than those that are
Mm.
Darker
being
skinned.
darker skinned.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
than our darker skin. So we'll pick it up about a week after Amy's incident, mid-December now. Sunday night, it's about 5 degrees. Hear the whistles. We live next door to a grocery store owned by an immigrant family who serve primarily immigrant families. And so we rushed out, and my goodness, 30 of my neighbors were gathered there.
It was really quite a
We're
neighborhood
blowing our
gathering.
whistles, and at that point, the presence of that many neighbors and whistles, ICE decided to drive on. So they drove off. So,
And the whistles, just so everyone's clear, that's a tactic of the community just to alert everybody that something's going on.
Exactly.
Gotcha,
Exactly.
gotcha.
and
Right.
it's something we learned from Chicago and LA, uh, and so at that moment, boy, did I feel and continue to feel such warmth about my community. Patrons of the store locked themselves inside after ICE left. After a while, that we thought they wouldn't come back, we escorted patrons to their cars, and in some cases, followed them home to make sure they would get home safely.
But can I just add, that was an awakening that, we didn't know about those other people in our neighborhood who were also ready to turn out. And so then we started learning about the organizing that was going on in terms of the signals
Gotcha.
and the alerts and the more organized way of responding.
So let's get into that. So since then, over this past month plus, just incredible organization, mutual aid groups. This morning, for example, I drove a neighbor to her job at a local school. She's fully documented, as is her husband. It's about a 8-minute drive, which she always did herself. But we drive her now. We take turns as neighbors driving her to and from school because 2 weeks ago, one of the cafeteria workers there was abducted from the parking lot as he arrived for work.
Wow.
Now, I consider this extremely low risk thing. Interestingly, about 10 days ago, a national reporter was here and asked to accompany, and I checked it out with my neighbor, and she said, fine, he can ride along. And he was preparing to do that until the legal department of his security of his media organization said, you may not do that. That's too dangerous for you to do. So I don't want to hold up that part as much as, and he still filed many good stories, but how does censorship begin? Doesn't it begin with self-censorship?
Of course.
So that I share that story. So my neighbors are delivering groceries, they're taking people to doctor's appointments. But then I think a very important activity, which has of course been weaponized, if you will, has been the constitutional observers. And we each have some stories to share there. And Amy's going to begin with, she was the first to become a constitutional observer in our house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, we're just all building on the shoulders of others. And so we've been trying to, I felt so helpless that day that I was just present at an abduction. We're trying to get ahead of the game and trying to actually be there, when the abductions start, and so that we can be a presence. So there are different ways of doing it. And we have had to change our behaviors because of the huge influx, thousands of these folks. And now they are indeed coming in these.
3,000
Oh,
ICE
yeah.
and
Yeah.
various
There's swarms of
police have been deployed.
Yeah. And, they're just so intimidating, really. But, we do have to laugh at them because their camouflage really sticks out in our snowy circumstances. But anyway, so people drive around in your neighborhood. It's become hyper local, especially here, because we've really been the target. But, we're a diverse neighborhood. Yeah. There's people with different color skins here. And So some people are posted at the places, some of the Mercado Central is one of the areas where there's a lot of Latino shops and we have businesses all up and down Lake Street that are owned by immigrant families. But my goodness, it's just so hard. It's just so hard on all the businesses. This is really an attack on our economy as well. But
Mm.
but anyway, the observers are there trying to say, again, to bring people to the site when necessary and to document, because we know from the murders that have happened, and I don't know what the national office viewers see of the many other kinds of instances we've had here, but there's so much brutality. And we hope that by videotaping, we can keep people from doing the worst cruelty.
Can we share some? Can I talk about January 7th?
Okay, go ahead.
Well, let's before
Yeah,
you dive into that, let's bring Craig in. I want
Okay.
to
good.
get his perspective, then we'll circle back to you. But Craig, um, tell us your particular vantage point and how you've experienced, the last 6 weeks or so there in Minneapolis.
No, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Jim. And I really appreciate all the work that you've done in the past with going back and forever. But State of the World Forum was really a huge influence on many of us.
Thank you.
I want to start my like it perhaps Amy and Mike have been at this for a long time. I was on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial back in 1963. And the reason I'm sharing that story is because this morning I was at the Whipple Federal Building with several hundred people. I have no idea, but it was led by the clergy once again in an attempt to talk with so-called czar Tom Holman. I'm not going to give him credit for coming to Minnesota to spread more lies about what is going on, because immediately people like Amy and Mike were served warrants. And my experience. Uh, Let me start with a screen share, if I might.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to put something up here that I think is very dramatic that many people have probably seen already, but I'm going to take a slightly different tact. Can you see this now?
Yes.
See what I'm showing? Maybe it's not full. Okay, here we go. Okay, what you're seeing is a picture right now, a map as of yesterday of, excuse me, I'm trying to,
You want to zoom in a
yeah,
bit.
there we go.
There we go.
So, as of yesterday, this is a very graphic map of Chicago and Minnesota, not New York, just to show the presence. We are Chicago's 3 times the size of Minnesota, LA 10 times. Okay, so the drama here is why? Why is Tom Holman here? Why
Mhm.
is the so-called commander of ICE gone? Why are people in the streets? This is not about immigration. This is
Mhm.
about fear and intimidation.
Yep.
Has nothing to do with immigration. It has a lot to do with racism. And it's been very clear from this administration, and not just from Kristi Noem and Miller and Trump, but an entire cabal of leadership at the top of this administration. And if you look back 3, 4 years to the publishing, maybe it was 2 years ago, the publishing of Project 2025. We started a study group back in early 2025. of 24 of Project 2025. It's a roadmap of what's happening now.
Mhm.
What we didn't anticipate was the speed and ferocity and cruelty that would be unleashed with Project 2025. This has been accepted by the entire Republican Party. This is a blueprint for the Republican Party.
Mhm.
Writ large. There are very few people that don't know about Project 2025 and what they were planning to do. And
Well,
this is a
Craig, just take a moment, just so our international audience that may not be quite as familiar as you are about it, just take a moment to
Project
describe what it
2025,
is.
yeah,
Yes.
was developed by many members of the previous Trump regime or administration that ran from 2016 to 2020. And it was led by the Heritage Foundation. Now, Heritage Foundation is based in Washington, and a fellow named Vogt, Vought, was as seen as the chief architect, who is now head of budget, and I forget his entire title, but is a very, very influential role in
Yeah,
this
he's the Office of the
administration.
Management and Budget
Yeah,
that
there you go.
oversees the entire federal expenditure of money.
Exactly.
A
Exactly.
powerful position.
And he's a hidden man, but he's got a lot of power. I know, I'm going to leave it to Amy and Mike to talk about what's happening on the ground, and they've been very eloquent, and I agree with everything. So what I've been doing is global and local.
Mhm.
Personally, my wife and I, Patricia, started the Center for Purposeful Leadership 30 years ago, and our vision is a just, inclusive, and interconnected world, a world that works for all. And so we're working globally. And so our message is to get out to the world. So we're working as of yesterday and the day before, we have been hosting Zoom calls with Europe, Africa, our country, Canada, et cetera, to really get the word out about what's really happening here
Good for
on the
you.
street and why.
Mhm.
So the brutality has been well documented. But what's happening now is that there's a subterfuge and a smokescreen going up around Tom Holman. Okay, we got rid of Kristi Noem. We got rid of Bavino. Bavino was the fascist-looking guy, head of ICE, who really loved to dress up in Nazi outfits. I mean, that was part of his whole, whole look. Now, I'm not a radical. I'm neither Republican nor Democrat. I'm registered voter. But when people say this is a red and blue issue, it is not. It's a human issue. It's a total human issue.
Mhm.
Those of you that are watching right now, you're probably getting this left-right battle, blue versus red. Well, it's not. It's not at all. What's happening here in Minnesota, and if you looked at that map, this was not just Minneapolis. It's reaching out into the entire state. You have Republican elected officials out in places like Wilmer, which is in the west. You have up in St. Cloud, in Republican territories where they are doing the same thing. Now, they're not getting the pushback that we are in Minneapolis and St. Paul, but it's happening. And it's going to happen it's going to happen to every city in this country right now. And as a matter of fact, it is. ICE has a presence. What they're doing is they're recruiting men from Proud Boys. You probably heard of Proud Boys. They're recruiting from the January 6th men that were released from prison. They're recruiting all over the country. There are virtually no guidelines to their recruitment.
Yeah.
Check
And
it
they're
out.
being offered vast amounts of money.
Well, people get a lot of press on that, but I want people to go Google recruitment for ICE and what the criteria is and what the reality is. The reality is basically that you want to, quote, save the homeland. It's based large part, a lot of their recruitments has white nationalist, not just inferences, it's very clear that this is a white Christian-based nationalist agenda. And the things I've been on the front line where people are saying, don't you get it? Didn't you learn? We got that lesbian bitch. I mean, stuff like this coming out of the mouths of federal agents.
Mhm. Mhm. Well,
Um, okay,
let's
thanks.
just hold that thought,
I
Craig, because
just
I'd like
walked.
to.
The reason I was late is I just came back from the Whipple
Yeah.
demonstration.
Yeah. But let's focus on the Renee Good and Alex Pretty murders. I'll circle back to you guys, Amy and Mike, because you live right within a few blocks of where it all happened.
Where it happens.
Tell
We're
us
not so much in the room
about
where it
that, and then
happens, but
also I'd like to also hear about the story of the arrests related to the church service that have gotten Don Lemon arrested, because that's a very interesting incident having deep constitutional implications.
Well, and thank you, Craig. Thank you for taking this message across the globe as Jim
Yeah,
has
absolutely.
very, very critical, and you really placed this well. So thank you. And yes, Greg Bull Connor Bovino has left us, but that's only a change of the face. In fact, from what we hear, and we'll share some of this, the terrorism is intensifying, but taking some new forms.
weaponry.
But let me go back, if I may, to January 7th. And I'm going to give this from my personal perspective. That morning, in fact, at 6 a.m., I went on my first legal observer shift. And at about 7 a.m., we heard over our signal chat group that there was ICE activity 2 blocks from where we were. So my partner and I, my neighbor across the street and I got out of our car and with our whistles and got within about 30 feet of the incident and blew our whistles. Now, in that instance, the ICE vehicles were leaving.
This is Alex Pretty you're talking about.
No,
No.
January
This is the day
7th.
Renee
January
Good was
7th. January 7th. Wednesday morning, January 7th. Just about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
2.5. And this vehicle drove off for whatever reason. They did not arrest or nab the African man who was arriving for work at 7 o'clock. Still dark. Still dark. And I'll just say, as I blew my whistle, I was not afraid. I mean, something could have happened. I really had no reason to fear. I'm a straight white guy. I have lived my life being pissed off and angry and sometimes here and there proud of my government. But I'll have to say that this is my personal first experience of being afraid of my government. And I know that many others have good reasons to be afraid, but for me, this is a unique realization, which you feel it in your body. So my shift ended at 8 o'clock. 3 hours later, I'm sitting down for Bible study, and a text comes that says to us, go immediately to 8 blocks away to 34th and Portland. So I join our senior pastor, and we arrive about 45 minutes after Renee was killed. Now, at that time, we didn't know a person's name. We didn't even know the person was dead. But as we arrived, the last of the ICE vehicles were leaving. we saw the tear gas they had lobbed as they were leaving and the chemicals that they had sprayed on the crowd as they were leaving.
Gratuitously.
A growing crowd. You can imagine that the crowd was already unhappy, and this made them a little bit less happy and more angry.
And it hurt them.
And who was left?
It was hard.
Who was left? Our local police department. And of course, this angry crowd was yelling all sorts of insults at the police. I felt the police were doing an important job preserving the witness of a crime scene. But they were left to suffer the abuse as a group of clergy and I gathered near the site next to the FBI and the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which was gathering the evidence. We prayed and we sang.
A life had been lost.
Which we were just learning as we were there. So since then, I had the naive belief an unarmed mother being shot would end this.
Mm.
Boy, was I wrong.
Mm.
It's intensified so dramatically since then. Just stories from our inner city Lutheran church. Across the street from our church, in front of a school, my colleagues at church watched as unmarked vehicles boxed in a car, broke the window, dragged a human being out of the car, pushed his bloody face onto the icy pavement, and started kneeing him in the face.
There was a swarm of men on him. They were pinning him down.
And one was kneeing him repeatedly in the face. Not unlike what you saw with Preddy when they were just punching him on the ground before.
And one of our cloud of witnesses yelled, "Stop kneeing him in the face." And that particular officer stopped. That's partly why we need to be there.
Last week, a good friend at church at our Wednesday evening gathering tearfully described how she's a counselor at one of our local hospitals. She watched as, again, masked agents nabbed one of her patients as he was walking from the parking lot to the appointment with her. And she just was so overcome with the powerlessness that she felt for not being able to stop that.
Mm.
Now, this week, we have learned of a new tactic. Now, ICE agents are beginning to disguise themselves. Another church worker described an agent dressing in an Amazon driver uniform and gaining entrance to an apartment building where many immigrants lived.
Oh.
Another agent presented themselves as representing a Muslim charity distributing food to solicit addresses for Somalis. I guess all I can say, it's evil.
Yes, and we know they've infiltrated our signal chats, and people we know have been held up for doxing and had death threats, including to the school the preschool where their child is. This is very serious stuff.
And this is just we're just giving you what we're part of. So
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
very small. We're giving you the micro view. Craig gave you more of the macro view.
Right.
But just our block does inspire us, and maybe we want to shift to some of the inspiring and just what's happening.
Well, before we get there, I want to hear your version of what happened in the church, because that is a very controversial and very publicly dissected event. And then we'll circle back to Craig for more of a macro discussion. But as you understood it, what happened in the church?
Okay, so I want to be very clear. We weren't there. So we also are basing our information on what we've heard from others. I have the greatest of respect for Pastor Nakima Levy Armstrong. We've been involved with her and her leadership and hold her in the highest of regard. There is this real problem in the confounding of Christian principles with the Christian nationalists. They are we renounce them. I mean, where does this come in with loving your neighbor? I mean, what gospel are they following? And when Nikema Levy Armstrong, I'm assuming, discovered that these people were being led by a senior pastor who is responsible for this horror going on, she felt called apparently to let them know, because I don't think that the parishioners knew prior to that what the daytime job was of this person that they were hearing sermons from and the nature of that. So that's, and I don't have more to add. I don't, I don't think anyone was hurt. I don't think Nikema would be part of something that threatened people in any way.
But they disrupted the service,
I would just say,
essentially.
read the Hebrew Bible. What happens to prophets who call out injustice?
Yeah. Yeah. And also, a lot of what we do are singing and chants and it is not, we Northern Europeans are used to religious services that are everybody sits quietly in your seat, but not everybody does it like that at church services. Some people are responding to the Holy Spirit. So
Right. Gotcha.
but I can't speak personally about what happened there. I
So
really
Craig, do you have any insight into any of those events or the church related event?
Let's put it this way. It was a calculated risk, a calculated media optic risk. I mean, Nikema knew exactly what she was doing, along with the people that went with her, along with Don Lemon, who, so why? The church basically was started by a white supremacist pastor years ago. He's no longer associated with the church. It's called Cities Church. It's in St. Paul. And one of the pastors is a guy named David Easterwood. David Easterwood is essentially the coordinator and in charge of coordinating activities for ICE in the Twin Cities. I don't know if it's Minnesota wide, but it is the Twin Cities. This was a demonstration to demonstrate that he, as a pastor, is in charge of what is going on in our region. Now, put those two together, being a pastor of a Christian church and what is happening on the streets of Minnesota. So I haven't talked to Nikema since, and I probably won't talk with her for a while, but it was not just random. They knew they were going to get exposure, and they knew they were going to get some of it would be negative, as far as I know. Like I said, I haven't talked with her. But let's take another look at a larger picture here. This morning, I was in the presence of probably 50 clerics. My wife and I supported rabbis coming in from all over the country last week for the major demonstration where it was 10 below zero on the thermometer and 15 to 20 below, depending on if you were in a wind tunnel in the shade. It was
remarkable.
cold. It was not only remarkable, it was inspired. It inspired the world. So do what they may, because let's get prepared for a lot more of, and I think Amy and Mike have illuminated what's been happening on the ground. But if I were to foresee the future, Holman's going to come in. There are going to be a lot more warrants. What they're going to do is keep the press busy with these high profile test cases and try and draw the attention off ICE.
Mm-hmm.
That's my guess. And that's what Trump does. He's a master. He's a master manipulator of the media. And even our own Star Tribune, which has done an excellent job, I would say an excellent job. They moved out of being passive into being fairly proactive, I would call it, on covering everything that's been going on. Well, I think if there's any media people here, your job now is to look beyond all of these celebrity cases that are going to come up. They're gonna go after Don Lemon. They're gonna go after Nakima. They're gonna go after, already they're discrediting Alex, right? They're gonna show a video of him kicking the taillight out, which, yeah, right. That's a reason to kill him, right? That was the reason. I mean, so there's a connection here. Trump just posted, and the inference is, oh, well, he deserved to be killed. He deserved to be murdered,
Mhm.
right? So that's the game that's getting played. And so we need to become a lot more sophisticated and a lot more aware of what the media is going to do and not do. Now, NPR is doing a pretty darn good job nationally.
Yeah.
Everybody else is either in a passive mode or in a typical left-right mode.
So let me
Well,
just
let's,
jump in on this bigger picture as well,
sure.
because these are things that Humanity Rising has brought up before. But we do see that what is happening with the ICE agents with us is basically they are acting as the henchmen of the apocalypse. Okay. And by apocalypse, I'm talking about its meaning as the unveiling. So many of us have been conditioned to believe what comes from our authorities. And this is an unveiling of the lies and the
Hmm.
brutality
Hmm.
of the empire, if you will, and what we're up to. And and I want to say that we all, this is a multiple attention requirement, folks. Even as we're all bothered here and in tumult, there's an attempt to grab control of our shared public treasures and siphon those off into the rich and powerful. And an example of that is the Boundary Waters Canoe Area, which, by the way, we share with Canada, you would think, but there's an attempt to remove the protections from copper mining up there, which would destroy the watershed. And that's happening right now. It's part of this, cabal, if you want to call it that, of what's going on. So we have to be attending to these shiftings of wealth as well. And I also, even as these poor guys in our cold camouflage are are on the streets, our whistles are for them too, because we are trying to alert them of the moral injury that they are in peril
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
in what they do now, and what they don't do and what they observe can lead them with a lifetime of diminished joy, diminished love, the inability to love and be loved. I can tell you from different vet stories, this is very real. Moral injury is very real. And these guys, a lot of them, just haven't been around long enough to learn what really matters. So we're alerting them as well, trying to, if you will, protect them from
Well,
moral injury.
good. Well, thank you for that. Let's broaden it. I really like what you just said, Amy, that the ICE agents are the henchmen of the apocalypse.
Mhm.
And what apocalypse means is the unveiling, the revelation of what
Yep.
ruthlessly, realistically is actually taking place. Because I think at its broadest, and I'd like to bring you back in, Craig. At its broadest, what we're seeing is an assault on democracy itself
Yeah.
by the President of the United States and his coterie of people who believe ideologically in the imperial presidency, or what they call the unitary presidency that there is no longer a need for checks and balances with the legislative and judicial branches on executive power, and that, in fact, the President of the United States, as the Supreme Court ruled last year, is immune from any prosecution for anything he does while he's exercising his official duties. So that what we're witnessing here, folks, is an assault at that level. I think tactically, I would also observe that what Amy and Mike and Craig are revealing in terms of the incidences that are happening is that the focus initially is on the immigrants, but the focus strategically is on the protesters. They are using the immigrant as a tactic for something, as Craig was mentioning earlier, is much broader and systemic. So they're really after the Amy's and the Mikes and the Craigs of Minneapolis, because they can take care of the illegal aliens, as they're called, almost any time and do it in a completely different way. So that we need to understand the structure of the apocalypse that's unfolding. So,
So,
Craig, I'd like to have you
yeah,
comment on that, and then I
well, there's
want to
a,
conclude
yeah,
our conversation
yeah.
with the tactics that are being deployed around nonviolence. But let's get to the macro view of what you think is actually taking place here.
Well, there's 112 people on this call, and hopefully there's been a little bit of vetting here. And I also see there's a recording going. And I mean, given that the three of us have really put ourselves out there, um, believe me, if they don't have my face, here's another tactic of intimidation is they're doing face recognition
Mhm.
and they're following people around and taking people home and saying, "Oh, hi, Bob. It was nice to meet you. Why don't we take you home right now?" And they're getting face recognition, license plate recognition. So this surveillance state that we're in right now,
Mhm. Mhm.
and the and how Amazon, I mean, I name almost all of your larger um, high tech companies are a part
They're
of it.
all in on it.
So
Facebook,
I want
Meta,
our, yeah, I want our listeners a
Google,
couple of things,
Amazon,
right?
Microsoft, all
What
of
I'd
them.
like to say is, what can you do out there? What you can do out there, folks, and I know some of you, I know Tom Eddington and I know Charles Beddington is on the call. I didn't recognize other people, but what you can do is you can feed the people, you can look out for your immigrant families. If you're white, circulate stuff. Don't be afraid. Find the things that resonate with you in social media and pass it along. Make sure that people know where you stand. Don't hide, because that's what they want. They want us all to hide, right? So be public, show up. You know, a friend this morning called from San Francisco, and they're meeting in San Francisco. They're meeting all over the country. Join, get involved. Find a resistance organization in your area, you know, but take care of our immigrants, take care of the non-white folks because it's up to us. The people of color aren't showing up here. You know, this morning there were no people of color at this march,
Well,
very few, if of any,
for good reason.
because for damn good reason. They're
Mhm.
sitting this one out because they have to, because this is us, folks.
Yeah,
When
gotcha.
we
People
all
that
show
look
up,
like me and Amy and Mike, we're the ones who got to make this happen.
Mhm.
So
when
thank
we
you. I'm
all show
sorry.
up, nobody stands out.
Right,
And
exactly.
those whistles about the peril of moral injury is for
Mhm.
all of us. It's for all of us who are at risk of being bystanders to this horror without feeling like you've done what you can. It does amount to that. It is
I-
time.
Well, let's talk about nonviolence now, because I think this is a core tactic, as it were, that's being implemented. And I think we ought to just explore the utility of nonviolent resistance given what's happening in Minneapolis. You can't fight these guys with guns because they've
Right,
got far more guns than
right,
you
right,
do.
right,
You
right.
Well,
can't.
that's not the only reason, Jim. I
No, I
mean,
understand that, but
okay.
I want to now just go into starting with Amy and Mike, because you've been committed to nonviolent struggle for many, many years. Talk to us about the structure of the resistance that's taking place in Minneapolis, because it's been overwhelmingly nonviolent.
Yes, and just amazing things are happening. It's really
Yeah, tell us
beautiful,
about that.
creative things are coming out of that. At the micro level, in terms of the vigils, the block by block vigils we held in the aftermath of Alex's killing, and then in the things that we're planning to do. But I do want to emphasize that there is incredible beauty in responding. Can you share that, Trouty?
let's see.
Anyway, so one of our neighbors, think of the children and how afraid they are of just what can happen to them going to school, and perhaps also losing a parent, is so disastrous to a
So
child. So my neighbor
explain
said,
this.
let's have. Do you see this picture now?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a neighbor's
Across the
house.
street.
And they said, okay, let's have an event for children. And together they made these beautiful signs that this says, together we're community and you're not alone. And it was an event where you had other people in the block who were singing and leading songs. And, it was a rouser. And I have to tell you that the cultural creativity is coming out in response to this. And I have certain
Poems,
we were
music.
definitely following principles of nonviolent resistance, which includes going after the pillars of this authoritarian regime. And that includes Target, for instance, and that's a big deal tomorrow, which you can find out about.
Yes.
They're a Minnesota company. We have specific demands of them to become a Fourth Amendment corporation. And Right, so that's tomorrow, and there are a list of other Minnesota companies that we're calling on pressure to, as we all use our not just our financial purchasing power, but also our pushing on them in various ways. I'll be sitting in tomorrow at a Target, and I encourage other people to try to find theirs too.
Now,
So.
have there been actual nonviolence training programs as this thing has been un
Many. They're happening
unfolding?
they're happening every day. Every
Fantastic.
day by different organizations all over this city is highly organized. There's no, I mean, this is what you're seeing on social media is not extemporaneous. It's been years in the planning. We learned our lessons from the murder of George Floyd. We do not want that to happen again.
Mm.
We saw what violence would do when our city was up in flames, and we do not want to do that again. And it's
It's
a lot of talk of love, more talk about love than there is about hate.
right.
More talk about love, loving, and not even, it's indiscriminate. It's unconditional love.
Mother
Loving,
love.
even loving the ICE, invaders,
But
because
I will warn that there are provocateurs. There were provocateurs
absolutely,
in the aftermath of
absolutely.
George Floyd's murder. We know that they're among us. They're,
Yep.
as you
Hmm.
mentioned,
Hmm.
some of the extremist groups, and then it could be I'll call them disturbed people, like maybe the guy who attacked Ilhan Omar.
Yeah,
But,
right.
they're unfortunately we're
A
we're a big
magnet.
group. Yeah. We know.
But I have to say, Amy, it's not coming out the way it did in the aftermath of George Floyd. They are clearly the exception here.
Right.
Very much the exception. And I think that bears itself out in the social media accounts. That this is really a very much of a nonviolent uprising.
Well,
Can I?
let's go a little deeper here, Craig, because you had the George Floyd
Yeah.
event, and we all remember that was just like almost like an eruption.
Well, it was an
That
eruption.
was
Exactly.
extraordinary, I think, in its rawness and its turbulence, shall we say. What's been remarkable 5 years on is the nonviolent, almost pacific response on the part of the folks in Minneapolis. So I'd like to kind of tease out from all three of you, what were the lessons learned? Because I think this is the crux of this program. You know, we know what's going on. The real question is, how do we now act in a nonviolent, inspirational way to ensure that we build momentum at the micro level, like you're doing in Minneapolis, but also at the macro level between communities around the United States, and I would say globally, to make sure that we stay disciplined in our efforts and nonviolent, both strategically and tactically, um, uh, so that we can prevail in the spirit of love. So let's talk about the journey in Minneapolis from George Floyd to Alex Pretty and the responses.
Well, I think there's a direct relationship. I believe that this current Heritage Project, et cetera, is in part the white backlash to the progress we made in the unveiling of
Mhm.
that
Good point. Hmm.
racist behavior. And I will say, frankly, as a neighborhood organizer, I had also not truly accepted the way in which my neighbors of color were brutalized by
Hmm.
the arm of the state. And I just have to get out there. This is our money. They spent $1 billion already here farming people. And we really do need that money to help people.
Can I? Yes, 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 and yes. And let me also add, if I may, the spiritual element. I think what sort of both externally and internally, the leadership from pastors, from rabbis, from imams, and quote lay people in faith communities as part of the leadership. And I'm going to push back against being Pacific, Jim. These are people who are sitting down, speaking out. It's a strong form of nonviolence. It
Oh,
is not
for sure.
it is not a passive form.
First
And
principle is
be,
includes being aggressive spiritually, mentally, and emotionally.
and I think that
It's a way of life for
I've
courageous
just
people.
seen how individuals and communities are drawing on inner resources. You know, those of us that are in a faith community call those spiritual resources. When we were at Chardon on pilgrimage, we wore shells as a sign of our journey. In Minneapolis, when we get up in the morning, we put on our whistles instead of a shell, both for practical reasons, because any moment we could be called outside, but it's also our symbol of solidarity and our commitment to love our neighbor. And I think this love of neighbor has brought people into the streets, people who are not, we had 50 people on our corner on Saturday night at a vigil around a bonfire, and there were hundreds of these across the Twin Cities.
Hmm.
I'm guessing 5 of the 50 at most went to church or synagogue or mosque, but it was a spiritual gathering. As
Mm.
we sang, as we prayed, as we planned, uh,
Mhm.
I believe in the spirit that's happening amongst so many and in our community.
Thank you. Craig?
Jim, I have to go. I've got something else I need to attend to, but I want to thank Amy and Mike. Your observations and your commitment to this work is amazing. And um, whoever's on this call, there's almost 100 people left. Again, stay present, stay involved. Uh, this could be coming to wherever you are
Yes.
fairly soon, fairly soon.
Mhm.
So don't be surprised, but be aware, keep your hearts open. And as Jim said, our churches are filled, singing. 400 people, I've seen 400 people marching, singing. This is a very different expression,
Yeah.
very different than anything I've experienced before. So thank you. I've got to go.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah,
We'll have you back down the trail. Thank you so
sure.
much in
Thank you so
regards
much.
to Patricia. So,
Hearts open.
Amy, Mike, why don't we close by just the question of to talk to us about, again, your commitment to nonviolent struggle and what gives you hope? What's inspiring you out of all this turbulence and dedication?
Palm Sunday path.
Well, because we are on this path together, and it was so inspiring to see who's turning out. And we are also part of a process that is actually seeking to call our true moral character in part by the religious practices of our past. There's going to be a Palm Sunday path going forward, and we're calling on major activities on that weekend.
Contrast the power of love and the people versus the power of empire. Love rides on a donkey, empire rides on a chariot. And we
Beautiful.
vision tens of thousands here in Minnesota and hopefully repeated around the country of people with their palm branches saying no to empire. And there's a parallel path. Eid is very close to Palm Sunday this year. There will be a parallel path led by the Muslim coalition that is part of the Faith in Minnesota, and then Faith in Action around the country.
And we know there are many other activities going on.
And then the corporate strategy. We need corporations to stand up and say, freeze the funding of ICE out of Minnesota, ICE out of our homes. And we're focusing on Target, Enterprise Car Rental, Home Depot, Delta Airlines, all companies either making money or failing to protect their customers and their employees.
Yeah.
So everyone will be hearing more about what you can do in your communities. That's while political leaders of our police department, of our prison system have spoken out, the corporate leadership, it's been a deafening mealy mouth response.
Totally. Well, Amy, Mike, thank you all so much, or both of you so much. It's been inspiring, along with Craig, to just feel and see and hear your commitment to the struggle and the commitment to nonviolent resistance and the commitment for a better world. I love the notion that love comes riding on a donkey and empire comes riding in a chariot. That's what we're up against, everybody.
Yeah, very serious stuff. Very
Love
serious.
against coercive power. That's both the heart of nonviolence and the purpose of nonviolence and the supreme efficacy of nonviolence, as Gandhi and Martin Luther King and many others have testified before us. So thank you both. Amy and Mike are going to join the after chat. You'll see the link in the chat box. You received the link in your Zoom reminder for today. This is going to be now broadcast on the Progressive Radio Network, which is syndicated worldwide. So this message will be getting out there in many nooks and crannies around our world. So thank you both.
And thank you for your prayers.